Grapplemania is truly ruining the entire experience of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre right now. Every single encounter is now a button mashing contest that the family is almost guaranteed to lose by design. There is nothing that is going to make people quit this game faster than this exact issue. The developers have emboldened this gameplay loop through multiple short-sighted reworks, and now it needs to be their #1 priority to address it. The most recent change that has led to this playstyle becoming even more prevalent than it already was is the failed grandpa rework. Now, I already made an entire video about that. If you're interested, you can watch that here, but in short, this grandpa rework removed the only deterrence in the game to grapple spamming, which was suffocating grip, a perk that makes close encounters 15% easier for family, which sort of puts grapples more on an even playing field between who wins or not. But even then, having the entire game literally revolve around button mashing is completely brain dead. It promotes unhealthy gameplay, the use of macros, and it's a massive accessibility issue, right? So this just cannot be allowed to dictate the entire gameplay loop of the game. Now, how they go about addressing this, there's a few different ways they can do it. They can revert the insta-kill change and make it to where how everybody wanted it, where when you won a grapple, you immediately could not be insta-killed anymore as victim, but if you were still in the grapple, your teammates could actually come and still do the insta-kill. So that's one option. It's probably the simplest option. They could also put a depreciating value on grapples as well, right? That's another option. So if you're constantly grapple spamming over and over and over again, each time you grapple spam, the family gets a bit of a buff for the next time they're grappled. So that way you're encouraged as a victim to use grapples as a last resort defense tactic instead of a first resort offensive tactic like they're used right now. However, the developers recently released a statement that gives me little hope for the future and any changes coming with them. In this statement, they said, "We got back in the office today from our weekend and we are working on things." I already hate how this starts. Gun does this all the time. They're annoyingly passive aggressive about the fact that they're humans. Like, bro, we know this is your job and you have a life outside of it. Playing the entitled community card is so cringe. Like, we get it. Nobody reasonable is asking you to give up your life to work on this video game 24/7. So please stop implying that. It's always, "Oh, we're sorry we took time off for Christmas to spend time with our families. How dare us?" Like, yes, of course you did. Please enjoy your life. Sincerely. This game is not that important, right? But also, maybe don't release a massive broken update the day before a studio-wide 3-week vacation. You are just setting yourself up for failure, right? Anyway, sorry about the tangent, let's continue. I know last week both Jet and I discussed multiple balancing topics pertaining to many of the grandpa perk changes. It is realistically going to take some time for folks to get adjusted to this change. Oh god, they're implying it's a skill issue and family players just haven't adapted to the grandpa changes yet. They are just completely oblivious to the reality of the flow of the game and how it unfolds. It's actually painful to read. Feeding grandpa is something we want to encourage more players to do, and seeing as it is an underutilized mechanic, we aim for the levels to be a way to further encourage blood feeding. God help us all. I'm sorry, but this just shows a complete lack of understanding. Grandpa is underutilized because there's only 3 grandpa perks that are actually good, and by making this tiered grandpa system, it's now virtually impossible to get value out of those grandpa perks. So of course nobody is going to feed him. The victims also have a spreadsheet of when every grandpa perk does activate, so even if you do manage to feed grandpa enough to get those perks, the victims will just easily stab him back down to level X in order to remove those perks. Guys, if the devs don't understand the issue, they will never be able to fix it, right? This is exactly the outcome I predicted the second I read the patch notes. This rework was a train wreck moving at 1 mile per hour, and the devs could not get out of the way in time. It's actually crazy to be this bad at your job. Alright, moving on. We are all ears and open to discussing that balancing as we stated last week. We actively communicate in our Discord server, which you can join here. I can say that we are passing along many of the discussions y'all are having, watching the videos you are posting, as well as listening to folks across our other community channels. We are sending that information over to the proper folks. Internal discussions are occurring, and we hope that you can allow us the time to do both work on that while also testing new things out for yourself and letting us know what works, what doesn't, what needs changing, etc. These changes alongside some big bug fixes was a lot. Game balancing on a live service game is just one of those interesting and fun things that's so wacky that changes and is fluid. Feel free to click on my username in the right submenu or jets to keep tabs on things. Well, I am glad to hear you guys are watching videos and listening to feedback, but so far you seem to be ignoring those in your community that are trying to steer you away from icebergs and instead listening to those who are shilling useless positivity about everything because they want to have a good relationship with you. I've seen it 1,000 times, but believe me, the positive people will be the first ones on the lifeboat the second the ship is sinking, and they'll also be the first ones to make a video the second they get back to land. Why the Texas Chainsaw Massacre died, right? It's so cringe. I've seen it happen with a dozen other games already. The always positive people aren't real people. They're content creating machines, so just keep that in mind. They really don't have your best interest at heart. So, as a result of everything we've discussed so far in this video, there has already been a mass exodus of family players, which is drastically slowing down matchmaking and queue times. It's very noticeable and it is making the game difficult to enjoy, and that only gets worse as time goes on. Adding to the fire, the devs implemented a lobby disconnect penalty under the ruse that they needed it in order to finally understand what is causing lobbies not to backfill. Yet this never happened. Instead, the devs took the easy route and saw the penalty was working, so they never bothered to actually fix the backfill issue. But now that the game is in a rough spot, the lobbies are not filling because they never fixed the issue. And now you can't dodge the lobby either to find a new non-broken one because of the penalty. So you are literally forced to wait in lobbies for sometimes 10 minutes, which will only get worse as time goes on because Gun chose not to actually fix the issue and just instead take the easiest path to a solution. And if it's not obvious by now, Gun keeps repeating this same mistake. They chose the easiest, fastest, and most short-sighted path to fix every issue and only end up making things 100 times more difficult for themselves going forward. For example, look at the most recent Murto times. They are now looking at Grandpa Perk tuning and Grandpa Perk levels, which is exactly the thing I warned victim mains about who were praising the Grandpa rework before it came out. Because the devs reworked Grandpa in a short-sighted way, of course the only outcome of that is to gigabuff every shit Grandpa perk to become worth its value. Look at how much more work the devs have now given themselves just because they made another short-sighted decision. Just look at a Grandpa perk like Brute Strength that slightly increases the damage of the family. Do you know by how much? 2%! That's it. Literally 2% for now a level 2 Grandpa perk. Of course they have to buff that now. It's worthless otherwise. It always has been worthless, right? That was the real issue with Grandpa. So now with their rework that they went with, it's just ripple effect into ripple into ripple. And then they'll turn around and say, oh, it's a live service game. It's so quirky, anything can happen. Like, no, it didn't actually need to happen. Either the balance team or someone in charge of the balance team is making horrible decisions for the game. They're bad at their job. It's literally that simple. They're just bad at their job. So long story short, do whatever you are gonna do with Grandpa at this point. My idea has been ignored. I accept that now, but please fix this poop ass brain dead WrestleMania meta before WWE buys you and turns your company into a diaper manufacturer. Please. It honestly makes the family role feel unplayable, and I know firsthand it's this and the Rush meta that's repeatedly incentivized through short-sighted changes that is making family players quit, and justifiably so. Family should not feel like a job to play. Victim is the much more fun role to play in this game right now. Do you really want it to be viable for a single victim to be able to grapple a family member and then do the objective in their face while they're stunned for eternity? We all know that's brain dead and boring gameplay. That's something you would put in a co-op game, not a competitive game. Alright, so there you have my thoughts on the current situation with TCM. I have other things in the pipeline like the solo queue experience with each individual character in the game, guides, more concentrated videos about certain issues like min-maxing, and attributes, things like that. But this video took priority because TCM is just crawled out of the gutter with the hands and skill tree update, so seeing them nosedive straight back into it is just disappointing to say the least. With that said, please leave a like if you enjoyed the video because it really helps me out, and as always, thanks for watching and have a good one.